Where do you want me to stand? At this? So, going first, you have the least amount of time to prepare your presentation in Nick's crazy last minute ideas. Please bear with me when we go through this, because this is hastily put together, mostly last night. But I'm going to talk about managing up, balancing tech debt versus business priorities. But actually, I'm also going to talk about things like leadership, teamwork, communication, conflict, philosophers, and psychology. For those of you who don't know, my background's actually in philosophy, so I don't really know anything about any of the other subjects apart from that, and we're not going to talk very much about that. But maybe it'll be interesting. So, starting off with terminology. So, this is kind of important and kind of not important. So, titles like manager, leader, boss, tech lead, director, executive, team lead, scrum master, they all generate sort of images in people's heads, and people have a connotation of what those things mean. And it would be really useful for this if you could forget about all of those preconceived things. So you've probably all seen things on LinkedIn which say a boss is this and a leader is that. And a lot of those things are really kind of just emotive bullshit that isn't actually very helpful. So try not to be too attached to the terminology that you have in your head. And we're going to go through some things which may or may not be useful for you guys. And if you care a lot about terminology, check out Wittgenstein. He's got some really good philosophy of linguistics. So the idea of management splits opinion quite a lot. So some people are very pro-management, some people are very anti-management, and you get the kind of two camps. Google did a couple of experiments to get rid of managers, once in 2002 and once again in 2008, much more scientifically. Both of the times they found that managers were extremely helpful in Google, and without them things were very problematic. But Valve is another organisation, so for those of you who don't know, they do they're an online, actually a bit of a marketplace, but for video games, and they make video games themselves as well. Massively, massively successful company, and they have a completely flat structure with zero management. So you've got two very, very successful software companies that have quite different approaches. Google, a more traditional sort of management structure, Valve, a very flat structure. But what you'll find in both of these organisations is they both have leadership for work. So both of them require projects and bits of work to be led by somebody. It's who that's different. So again, one of the reasons for saying try and forget about the terminology is that actually we kind of label things like leadership and management with certain terms. So let's carry on. So I want to share a little secret about my first management job, and anyone who has managed people or managed teams before may be able to relate to this. So when I went from sort of developer, analyst, and UX into management, I thought, this is great. Managers don't do anything, right? Like, this is going to be fantastic. You're going to have loads of free time. It's going to be really easy. I'm going to get paid more money. And actually, it's all a lie. None of those things are the case. When I was first manager, it was the busiest time of my life in my career. There's so much stuff that happens when you're in a management role that you can't necessarily talk about with everyone. So there's all the people problems. There's people's internal problems, there's people's external problems, there's conflict, there's budget, there's processes, and you only see kind of the top of what managers, particularly in software, often do. So there's a lot of shite and not fun stuff that they have to do as well. So actually it wasn't quite as fun as I thought. So I don't like this dog, you end up thinking, oh, it's going to be really good fun, and then you end up stuck and going, oh, actually not so great. So for anyone who's kind of read Machiavelli, he talks a lot about some of the problems you get into in a leadership role. Most people think he's kind of a little bit harsh, but it's very interesting to read because he talks about the kind of problems that you can get into where you're in a lose-lose situation. And managers are almost always in a lose-lose situation. You've got to make somebody unhappy. You've got to choose between two people or help resolve conflict between two people where there isn't necessarily an option which means everyone's happy. So that's kind of the interesting side about management. But how do we get a better perspective on management, how you can manage up, how it can be useful, and how it can't be negative, has no positive, essentially. So what I thought I would do is use a bit of an analogy to try and help us, because we are tied to our preconceptions about these things. So we're going to talk about boats for a while, and we're going to forget about software for now. We're going to come back to that in a minute. So this boat is a team of people, and they're trying to win the race. But in this analogy, there's two problems. The first problem is that they're about to hit something in the water. This is just a PowerPoint block, but imagine that's a bridge or whatever it is. And that's their first problem. The second problem is that the boat's taking in water, so it's got a little leak at the back. So neither of them massive problems, and teams could still potentially win the race. But one of the big problems that this team is going to face is that everyone has a very different perspective. So person one at the back there, they're worrying about the leak. So they're like, shit, we need to fix this leak, we need to bail the water out. If we don't address it now, the boat's probably going to sink before we get the last 5 miles or whatever it is to the end and win the race. Now, person 8, though, he has a very different perspective to person 1. Person 8 can see that the boat's about to crash into something and is desperately saying, well, let's steer around it, let's row the boat around it. Everyone in the middle is like, no, we shouldn't wave the boat around, we want to go straight, that's how we're going to win the race. We don't want to slow down, we want to keep going straight. So everyone's perspective in the boat is very, very different. And you can see how the team could potentially get into a problem where person 8 is saying we need to start swerving, person at the back is saying no, we need to stop the boat, and everyone else is saying no, we need to just keep rowing straight as fast as we can. In this example, it's going to be relatively easy to sort of reconcile the different perspectives and solve the problem with communication. So the teams start talking, they start sharing their problems. Actually, we need to avoid this. Now I appreciate the boat might sink if we don't deal with that, so let's fix this, fix that, carry on round, and happy days, we can win the race. That's a very basic example. In business, obviously, there's more than just 1 or 2 problems. There's a myriad of different problems and perspectives that we can get into. In this example, communication can help. So what's that got to do with managing up, management of software? Well, in the boat example, again, there were 9 people. So providing everyone in that boat has a reasonable relationship with everyone else in the boat, it's quite easy for them to communicate, it's quite easy for them to share their perspectives and share their problems. So the person at the front can say, hey, we're going to hit something, we need to avoid it. And if he's got a good relationship with people around him, they'll go, oh yeah, fair point, let's pass that on, let's be aware of that. Person at the back, similar story, the boat's going to sink if we don't deal with it, pass that forwards, everyone understands, there's good relationships between those people so they can succeed in the race. The problem comes when you have to scale that. So this is roughly the size of the tech team here at Nottingham High Street, which isn't a huge team. Now, when you scale something, it's very hard for then everyone to have a relationship with everyone else. So I don't think there's anyone in the tech team who has a really great relationship and a great understanding of what every single other person in the tech team does. You'll have better relationships with some people, you'll have a broad understanding of everyone, but it's quite hard to build very strong relationships with very large numbers of people. And this is where companies particularly come into trouble. And obviously this is just the tech team. This doesn't take into account all the other departments and all the other teams. So management comes in and helps out. It says, well, okay, everyone in the boat team, you have a manager, you kind of share your information with them, and everyone else has a manager, and the managers form a team so they can communicate, and therefore wherever a problem pops up in this sort of sphere, in theory, people are all going to be able to communicate it and be aware of it. So imagine if that boat was 80, 100 people long. If you've got managers who are meeting regularly and sharing the problems that happen across that boat, it's a lot easier to kind of manage that. And it's a way of maintaining relationships. Then obviously you can scale this to sort of 220 people in, say, our organisation, where you've got a marketing department, a commercial department, a customer service department, a partner-facing department, a finance department, a people department. Having things in place to enable those departments to communicate and share their problems and share their perspectives is very, very useful. Now, it doesn't have to be a traditional manager. That can just be a designated person in the team. There's lots and lots of ways of operating it, but the role of management is particularly useful when you're an organisation operating at scale. So sharing perspectives is really, really important. So let's think back to engineering now. So, one of the big problems that I'm guilty of, and certainly a lot of people at Nottingham High Street are guilty of, is that we have this fallacy of there's this tech versus business. And you hear it all the time. The business won't let us address the tech debt. The tech team don't want to work on the features we need to work on. And there is a definite conflict there. So I'm not saying that there isn't, but it's a fallacy in that tech are part of the business, and the business is reliant on tech. So a company can't succeed or fail in isolation. So for instance, if the business's trade goes downhill and the business goes out of business, there is no tech team. The flip side of that is if the website's down and not performing, we're not trading and there is no commercial aspect. So we often talk about tech and business, but actually we need to try and get out of that. And that's quite hard to do. But again, trying to think about different perspectives is really, really important. So sort of to recap the 3 points, one is that everyone has a very unique perspective, and that's a very good thing. So some people care a lot about commercial trade. Some people care a lot about how our partners feel. Some people care a lot about code quality. Some people care a lot about marketing and driving traffic to the website. Those are all different perspectives, and they're all very, very useful. And if you remove one of those perspectives, as a business, we can't succeed. So having different perspectives is good, but we need to use that to create discussion and not conflict. The second thing to remember is that actually we succeed or fail together. So teams succeed or fail as a team, not as individuals. And you need to trust that people will do what they think is the right thing given the information they have. And that's quite a key one. So when people make bad decisions, they're not making a decision thinking, this is a bad decision, but actually I'm going to do it anyway because, whatever. People think it's the right decision at the time of making the decision. And it might later turn out to be a bad decision because they didn't have the right information. So again, looking back to point one, it's really important that everyone's perspective gets shared so that people can make better decisions. So let's go through some examples. So talked a little bit about this, so unique perspective. So every team and every person has a different perspective of the organisation and what the organisation's challenges are. So just like in the boat, the guy at the back thinks he's got the most important problem. He thinks the boat is sinking, that's really important, we should fix that. The guy at the front thinks he's got the most important problem. We're about to hit a bridge or an obstacle in the water or whatever it is. And it's only by sharing those perspectives that the team can actually overcome both of those things and succeed. And that analogy applies to not on the high street, whether it's between the tech team and the commercial team or between different teams inside tech. It's really important that we appreciate people's different perspectives. Next, we succeed or fail as a team. So I talked about this as well. When people want to push features out, that's because their perspective suggests that these features are going to help our business and help us succeed. When the tech team don't want to work on those and want to deal with some of the underlying challenges, that's because they want the website to stay up, which ultimately is there to help the business succeed as well. So mostly people all want to achieve success, but again, it comes back to the previous point on everyone's perspective is a little bit different. So communication is super important, and using that management team, so thinking back to that sort of blobs everywhere, using the management team to help communicate some of these things is really, really important. And it doesn't have to be your manager. It can be anyone who's a tech lead. It could be architecture. It could be whatever. But having forms of communication is really, really important. There's kind of a classic example of tech debt where someone's slaving away at something and they think they're too busy to actually fix the problem, and everyone's got a different perspective. Actually, it's going to be quicker for this guy to stop pedaling and change to round wheels, and he's going to get faster, even if it means slowing down for a small amount of time. So perspective is really important. And then the final one is that I mentioned before, everyone does what they think is right based on the information they have. So I want to share an example with you guys about when I was working in the Outnet, because it's kind of funny and kind of sad, and it was one of my biggest fuck-ups. So we had the sale on during the Outnet, big sale, similar sort of size to Knots. Actually, Outnet does a little bit more in terms of transactions per year value-wise, and a little bit less in terms of transactions number-wise. So we'd taken a couple of million during the sale day. We'd worked actually really well with marketing. We'd staggered the emails. They came and sat with us. The site traffic had ramped up, and then it was ramping down. We were monitoring everything. Happy days, database usage, CPU usage at about 10%. Now, before the sale, we'd turned off stored procedures on the database that would clean up out of stock items and things like that, because they were very, very heavy and caused problems. As more technical people know, stored procedures are not a great thing. So we turned them off to get through this sort of peak sale, and then it was sort of, everything was winding down, but the site was starting to look a little bit weird in that there was lots of out of stock product that would look available until you got into the checkout and it actually checked the stock and then it would say, hey, it's out of stock, which wasn't great. So I made the decision to say, yeah, let's turn the stored procedures back on. And at that point, the database usage went 10%, 15%, 30%, 100%, everything went down within about 30 seconds. And what's interesting there is that that was my choice. When I made it, I didn't think, oh, I'm going to take the site down, that's going to be fun, that's going to cost us 50 grand, that's going to be the right choice to make. I genuinely believed it was the right thing for the business to do, because there was a bad customer experience on the site. Customers wouldn't know something was out of stock until they got to the checkout. That's kind of frustrating, that's kind of annoying. And although the stored procedures definitely had an impact on the database, we didn't realise the impact of running a stored procedure was the equivalent of 30,000 users. I also didn't realise that leaving the stored procedure off for several hours and then turning it back on had even more of an impact than it just running naturally, because it had more to clean up. So with the information I had, I thought I was doing the right thing. In hindsight, it clearly wasn't the right thing to do, and it would have been much better to wait another couple of hours and then turn it on. But again, everyone does what they think is right based on the information you've got. And if you haven't got all the information about how something works, you can't make the right kind of decisions. So again, recapping, three things are: everyone has a unique perspective, that's really important. Companies succeed or fail as whole companies, and you should trust that people like me do what they think is right. And it might turn out that it wasn't right, but you can only act based on the information you've got. So talking openly and honestly is really, really important. So sharing your views about what you think the challenges are is super, super, super important. Obviously, it's how you share them that can get people's backs up or not, and we're going to look at that in a second. But what if, yeah, great, Dan, that's all good and well, I get that, but I'm still super frustrated, people are still annoying me, they're still doing the wrong kind of stuff. So now we're going to stray into psychology a little bit, and this is not an area of my expertise, but I'm going to share some stuff that was shared with me, which I found really useful. So we're going to look at ego states, transactional analysis, and non-violent communication, which sounds exciting. So let's start with ego states. So every person has a parent, adult, child ego state. There's a bunch of psychology that thinks this, which is fine. Within parent, there's a couple of kind of key states. There's critical parent and the nurturing parent. Then there's an adult state, and then there's sort of 4 or so child states. So kind of the important child states, the adaptive child and rebellious child. So let's go through these. So the critical parent is the one who always says, no, why did you do that? That was wrong. You've made a mistake. You're no good. Why do you code that way? Why do you whatever? And every person has the ability to go through these states, and we ourselves will often go through these different states multiple times in a day. You've got the nurturing parent, which sounds good, but actually is also really bad, and in many ways worse than the critical parent. So that's the person who's like, no, it's okay, everything's fine, you know, there was this really terrible thing that happened, but it's okay, I'll deal with that, don't you worry about that, I'll take that on, forget about that. And that's really bad as well, which we'll come on to in a minute. And then adult state is the state that we want to be in the workplace generally, and then we've got the 2 child states. So the rebellious child is, oh, it's all shit, you're an idiot, you know, it doesn't, you know, why are you always making me do this? I don't want to do it, I'm not going to participate, I'm not going to play. And the adaptive child is the one who's always like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that thing, even though it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I'll just do that. You've got something, yeah, whatever you ask, I'll do it. So these are kind of the key states that can cause problems in work, obviously, apart from the other one. So let's look now at transactional analysis, which looks at how people transition between these 2 states based on interaction between 2 individuals. So we've got person number 1, and we've got person number 2. I'm going to go through about 5 examples of these. I'm going to blitz through, and you can probably see some of these in your everyday work. So these are a bit more code focused, but you'll get the picture. So person 1 splits some code, person 2 reviews the code and finds some issues, that's fine. The person 2 then takes the critical parent approach, starts criticizing you. That was terrible, you know better than that, why did you do that, that's no good, you're rubbish at coding. Person 1 then obviously gets really annoyed and they start criticizing back. Well, you know, if you'd have thought about it before you asked me to do that task, it would have been better, or it's not my fault, you haven't provided the right framework, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously the end result of this is conflict. So they've gone from a situation which didn't need conflict into a situation that has conflict. Example number 2, this time the person reviewing says, actually, yeah, the code wasn't great, but don't worry, I fixed it all, submitted it, merged it, you don't have to worry about that. That's the nurturing parent approach. This is bad because this can create a response of, oh, okay, yeah, you fixed that, well, thank you. And then that person becomes disempowered because they don't feel responsible for the code they submitted. So they don't feel like it matters whether they do things well or do things badly. They then get removed from the consequences of their action because person 2 is always the nurturing parent. And this is the more dangerous one because this is the one that's much harder to see. So Critical is really easy to see because there's people arguing, there's people crying. That's very obvious, and actually managers can then come in and they can deal with that and go, what's going on? Why is everyone angry? Why is everyone upset? This one slips through without being seen. So you have a world where, in this example, person 2 is sort of fixing and coddling the other person, so the other person no longer feels responsible, and they're disempowered from the work they do. Somebody's disempowered, they're not going to be innovative, they're not going to be thinking about the consequences of their work, and it's generally really bad for a company as well. What's this final one? So this is critical parent. So this can go the other way. So when someone criticises, instead of criticising back, they can then be a rebellious child, start being childish and calling the other person an idiot. The other person can then come down from critical parent into the child world. Things start getting really personal, and you've got conflict again. So similar to the first example, but instead of both being critical parents, they both be rebellious children. Again, this is really obvious and not great for a workplace. I talked about obviously code review in this example, but it could apply to an all hands, it could apply to a trade update, it could apply to personal development feedback, it could apply to an architectural review, it could apply to pair program, it could apply to retrospectives, it could apply to any interaction with another person. So every interaction that you have with somebody, whether it's at work, whether it's with friends, whether it's romantic, whatever, you can end up going through these states. And for me, this is a really useful thing to think about because you can kind of see it happening. And again, in retrospect, it's really obvious what's happened, but at the time, you often don't notice. So it's really useful to be aware of this and how this influences you and how this influences reactions from other people. So the final example is the right one, which is split some dodgy code. Person 2 goes, hey, that's not great. There's some issues with that. I'm a little bit worried about this. Talk me through why you've thought about it that way. Oh, this is what I was thinking. Okay, I can see why you've done that. Maybe we could change it. Great, balanced approach. Everyone learns. There's no conflict. That's a good example. It can also happen this way as well. So you can have it so that somebody takes a critical approach, and actually the way to deal with that is to try and avoid going into the parent or the child mentality response and try and stay in the adult space. So try and understand, right, I get that you're angry with me, but actually let's talk about this and try and take the high ground, explain why you're upset, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But transaction analysis can work in lots and lots of different ways, so it's worth trying to stay reasonable when it comes to conflict. And in this example, the person 2 could have actually, I was pretty wound up by that, but I get it now, I'm going to calm down and we're going to work together on this. And you can avoid conflict that way. So the last bit I want to talk about is non-violent communication. So it sounds, so it sounds very serious. It's developed in Northern Ireland. So etc., etc. But the reason conflict arises is because they often focus on the differences. So they focus on the stuff that isn't the same. So they're in many ways more similar than any other kind of 2 different types of people, but they focus on the differences, and that results in lots and lots of conflict. So somebody came up with non-violent communication as a way to try and make the peace talks more successful, because the peace talks always became finger pointing, focusing on the differences, focusing on the things that didn't work. Non-violent communication has 4 kind of parts. The first one is observation. So instead of attacking and saying, you did this, why did you do that, that's bad, which makes it very personal for somebody, the first step is observing. So only talking about things in terms of facts. This happened. This is the sequence of events, and trying to refrain from judgment is really important. So whenever you're in a situation where you're massively frustrated, and that could be with your manager, that could be with a teammate, that could be with anyone, it's important to try and stick to facts, so try and go for the observation approach. This has happened without meaning. The next part is talking about how you feel. And it's really important that it's about you. So you can do the observation of X said Y, and then the feeling part should be, this made me feel X. So you shouldn't say, and that's bad because that creates conflict, but no one can argue with how something makes you feel. So if something makes you feel upset, if something makes you feel like you've not been trusted, if something makes you feel like you've not been listened to, those are things that are within you that no one can really question. You can't have a conflict about that. No, you didn't feel upset. Well, you can't really start the kind of conflict that way. So talking about how you feel is quite a useful part of that. The next bit is need. So I need to feel trusted. I need to feel like my work adds value. And then request, therefore, can you do something differently? So this kind of format is useful for dealing with conflict. So if all those other bits don't work, then this is quite a useful one. And it's one to read up more about. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but it's a formula that can really help with managing up. It can help with dealing with conflict. And obviously, the more conflict that you can deal with in the day-to-day yourself, the less that you're putting on your manager, and therefore the easier it is for them to focus on the things that really matter. So to recap, companies succeed or fail as whole companies. So try and avoid tech and business language, and I'm pretty crap at that. So it's certainly something that you need to be really mindful of. Otherwise, you can slip into that product versus tech, team A versus team B, tech versus commercial, and that stuff isn't very helpful for anyone. The next bit is that people will do what they think is right given the information they have. So just like I set the site down when I was working for Nesporter, that wasn't me thinking, yeah, it'll be fun to set the site down. That was me thinking it was genuinely the right thing to do given the information I had. So bear that in mind when you think someone's making a stupid decision. So when someone's saying, I really need this, or I'm really pressing for this, or whatever, bear this one in mind, because they probably think it's the right thing to do. And they probably think it's the right thing to do based on the information they have. Therefore, you might have some information or know of somebody who has some information that can help them change their mind. And again, managers, whether it's delivery managers, tech leads, architects, or whatever, can be really helpful to help you with these discussions as well. Third one, everyone has a very unique perspective, so everyone has a different view, just like the boat, everyone sees something a little bit differently, and management can help with the overhead of coordinating this. So rather than you have a really great understanding of financial accounting and commerce and user experience and testing and recruitment and the people team and partner relations and code and CSS and Ruby and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. Actually, if you maintain a good relationship with your manager and they're maintaining relationships with their management peers, etc., the framework works a little bit better, because then you don't have to know a million things. You can specialize, and obviously the more you know, the better it is. But you can use the manager to help spread those unique perspectives to help the business make the right decisions. And then finally, always share your perspective and discuss with others. So if you're frustrated about something, it's really, really important that you share that. The way to share it in a way that's not going to annoy people is to try and maintain that adult state. So try not to be critical, try not to be childish, try and stay in the objective. Here are the challenges, here are the things that are stopping me doing my job, here are the things that could be better, etc., etc. And again, using management to help with this where it's applicable. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Obviously, there's questions around things like speed versus quality. So should we do it the right way or should we do it the fast way? Hopefully, based on all of the random things I talked about in this presentation, it becomes clear that that's a conversation. There isn't always a right answer, so you shouldn't always put quality above speed, and you shouldn't always put speed above quality. If you do either of those, the business will be in trouble. So if you write code perfectly or as best as you can, and then constantly refactor it and constantly keep it perfect, the delivery is probably going to be quite slow. Therefore, the business is probably going to fall behind. Competition is going to overtake, and there's going to be trouble. And you might find that in 3 or 4 years' time, the business is really struggling. Equally, if you throw features out at a rate of knots, you're going to get into a world where there's loads and loads of tech debt and everything grinds to a halt and you can't move. And actually, that's probably where we're closer to at the moment. But for everything, it should be a conversation. It should be around, okay, if we do this a little bit hacky, here are the pros and cons. If we do it this way, here are the pros and cons. Have that conversation so that everyone has the different perspectives, because often management or product or the business don't have the perspective around the dangers of doing things the fast way. Equally, developers very often don't have the perspective of, if we don't get this feature out for Christmas or for Mother's Day, actually that's going to cost us £2 million in trade, for instance, which when you have those different bits of information, decision making becomes so much easier. So those were kind of some of the key points. I think that was quite quick, so we've probably got time for like questions, thoughts, comments.
way to approach a situation of conflict if you don't feel comfortable?
So it depends on the individual. I think the reason why we have management teams in place is so that they can help with that. So usually the best port of call is have a chat with your manager if you're not comfortable, explain to them why you're concerned, why you're not comfortable, deal with it that way. I think is certainly a really good first port of call. Obviously, if there's conflict with your manager, then speak to somebody else, speak to someone you're comfortable speaking to with. But again, back to this, like sharing your perspective and your concerns is always really important. If you leave them bottled up, then that means someone like myself is going to be making decisions without a bit of information that could really influence me or whoever it is.
Just checking to see if we've got any questions on Slack. A quick one. So there's a bunch of companies that have had considerable success by basically eliminating management. So Ricardo Sanco in Brazil, one of the largest engineering firms in the world, WL Gore Associates who make Gore-Tex, getting to company economy is rare, widely, but basically nobody has a manager, everyone's self-organising, everyone has to try and kind of figure out what they're working on. In actual fact, you're not even necessarily doing the jobs.
Yeah.
How does that work? Yeah, is that random kind of outliers, or is there possibly an alternative?
There is, yeah. So if we go back to, oh God, there's so much animation. Why do I always put so much animation in all of my slides? So if we go back to this, I mean, Valve is a really interesting example of a company that have a sort of no management approach. So these guys, and I think we'll share this presentation after, and there's a link to. So there's a link here to take you to their handbook, which talks a lot about their management structure. So there's those guys, and actually there's a really great book called Reinventing Organizations, which talks about evolution of organizations. So essentially, and I won't be able to do it justice here, but you've got kind of really early organizational structures which are very tribal, where you have like one dominant person, rules by violence, blah, blah, blah. And that's still sort of prevalent in things like mafia organizations, etc. Then you go on to like amber organizations, which are like super rigid, structured, and that's things like the Catholic Church, things like that, which operate in a very structured way, so on and so forth. Go through like industrial, blah, 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 to the kind of more traditional model that we have now. But there's a whole heap of companies who are what's called kind of teal companies who do flatter structures and have a more people focus, and that can be companies like Patagonia, companies like Valve, can be like big sort of health companies in Denmark. They have some great examples there. And what they have is it's not that they have a lack of leadership. People still do leadership roles. So people still will take charge of projects and provide directions. There's some great examples of a company that has 5 joint CEOs, which sounds like an absolutely terrible idea to have 5 joint CEOs, but because of their approach to people and culture, they make it work. So I think actually as companies evolve, the role of management is going to change, and this is kind of why I don't want to focus too much on terminology, but there is always going to be a need for leadership. So there's always going to be a need for direction and idea sharing and perspective sharing. So I think actually we're at a relatively exciting time, and that probably in 20 or 30 years, a lot of those outliers, and maybe even less, are going to be more mainstream as our kind of organisation structures evolve. And there's quite a few stages. Again, it's worth reading Reinventing Organizations if you're interested in that. But there's quite a few stages where very clearly how we are organised as individuals and how we work together changes. And we're at a point now where there's companies who are changing, like the examples you've given, and some of these guys. And it's not that they don't have leadership in those companies, they absolutely do. You need leadership to be successful. But the more traditional management roles change. And the more you have highly skilled and cross-functional people who know about, for instance, finance, for instance, trading, for instance, partner relations, then the lighter that management job can be. So if you've got a really strong tech lead who's also really commercially aware and blah, 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 you can still have a hands-on developer and not necessarily need a manager, because the functions and the perspectives can get covered in a different way. So I think the important bit is, and this is a really waffly answer, but the important bit is that like everyone's perspective gets picked up and gets shared, because like on that boat, if it's a really long boat, you don't want somebody to be sitting on a problem and not being able to communicate it. But not at the moment. We have delivery managers, and they're dedicated to sharing perspectives and organising information and helping decide. But in other organisations, that can be individuals in the team who step up for a time to do that. So I think we're going to see more of that stuff going forwards.
So there's one company I was reading about a few weeks ago where they decided they didn't need a CEO anymore. So obviously there's a legal responsibility for people to be on board and to be answerable. And while the strikeout kind of lines in the article is that the management was a skill, not a role.
Yep.
So basically everyone in the organisation was encouraged to, in your analogy, to use the adult level thing.
Yep.
And everyone was encouraged to learn some management skills and communication skills. And therefore there wasn't really a need for managers.
Yep.
So ended up much further.
We've got a couple of questions from Slack. The first question, I suspect you're being trolled. What does Dan think of the episode Games Ponies Play?
Dan's not seen that.
And this question is actually a serious one, thankfully. I have a question for Dan about ego states. The child ego state can be the source of playfulness, and therefore creativity, and therefore innovation. Balance between the centered adult state and the playful child state is what's needed to work and create excellence.
Yep. So there's two more child states I didn't include on there. One is free spirit, which is kind of the creative, or slightly more creative side. I think it's to do, the difference is to do with interaction. So creativity and childlike states is good for creativity. But it's when you're interacting with another person, you need to understand whether that's the right approach. And actually, sometimes things like a critical parent or a child state might be a good approach for interaction, but they come with risks and consequences, essentially. So I think it's up to you to use that sort of stuff, how you want to use it, and be in the state you want to be in. I think knowing about it and being aware of it is useful. Certainly for me, it was useful. But yeah, definitely don't want to kill creativity.
Why do some people tend to focus on one of those states versus others? Is it just a natural thing that we're all just programmed together?
My psychology knowledge is not good enough to answer that. I think it's probably some sort of mix of how people are brought up and who they interact with and the things that get learned. So I think a lot of behaviours are learned and reinforced. So often people will use one of those states as a sort of way to get attention if they've not got attention, or it's kind of shock tactics, and then they might see success in that. So people can often be very successful by being a critical parent, for instance. So that will reinforce them to do that more, which is why perhaps some people do that sort of thing more. Don't know.
Can you give us a list of reading material?
Yeah, so there's links in a lot of these. If we share this, there'll be some links in things like this has got Valve's employee handbook, which talks about their flat structure. That's a link to Google's experimentation management. So the two examples of where once they got rid of management and then quickly went up shit, we need to get them back. And then the second time they did it in a more kind of logical approach and did an experiment where some teams have managers, some teams didn't, and they compared sort of an A/B test almost, which teams performed well, and found that actually overall the teams with managers performed better than those without. But I think to Paul's point, it's, the structure is kind of less important. It's that role of leadership, those skills of being able to have good conversations, etc. But there's loads of links in this to philosophers and whatever.
Any more questions? Big round of applause for Dan.